So I was in the gym today, and I was thinking about some stuff, and I thought it might be useful to get it down on video, and rather than just having me talking, might just rant away while I render out this piece that I'm working on right now. So we'll see how it goes. So while I was in the gym, I overheard somebody talking about hunger statistics. And I don't know exactly what the context of the conversation was, but hunger statistics came up, and I found myself thinking about it during my entire time in the gym. And the more I thought about it, the more I realised how much I couldn't understand how hunger statistics work. So my first thought was, okay, imagine I'm working for the census office in the government, and they asked me to figure out how much of the country is going hungry. My first thought would be, shit, how the hell am I supposed to measure something as personal and subjective as hunger on a national level? And so I started thinking about the different ways you might get that data. And we'll start with what's probably the least effective or the most stupid one, which is personal accounts. Now, that wouldn't work because obviously, country of millions of people, it would take an awful long time to go around and ask, are you hungry? But also, it doesn't account for, first of all, how do you control for differences in appetite? Like, how exactly are you supposed to measure hunger empirically and metrically? How do you account for the different levels of appetite within people? How do you account for the different kinds of food that people eat? How do you account for obese people? How do you control for people, say, with eating disorders or who don't eat as often as they should? So much just doesn't make sense. So the personal account thing can't work. I thought, okay, well, what about money? Okay, so you do it by income, or perhaps not by income, but perhaps by measuring a household's monthly food expenditure. I thought, okay, well, there's already a whole bunch of problems that come up with that as well, because how do you control for the different prices of food for where people shop? How do you account for food that goes to waste? So there's plenty of people who spend money on food that doesn't get eaten. How do you account for people who grow their own food? Because there's plenty of farmers here in Ireland and around the world, and plenty of them will, produce their own meat and vegetables, so they're not going to be spending as much money, say down at the supermarket, on food. And growing your own food has slowly become more and more popular around the world, I've noticed, particularly among, say, vegetarians or vegans. So how do you control for that type of stuff? You can't. And there's people who do save money by making the most out of the food that they buy, so they'll get the most out of their ingredients and nothing goes to waste. So they won't be spending as much, but that doesn't mean that they're not getting enough food. And many people who are overweight and obese are working class people. And so I thought, okay, well, what if a person is, well, why don't you look at subsidies, government subsidies for people who, say, are, so look at something like food stamps. We don't have food stamps here in Ireland, but you could look at something like that. Maybe it's like, okay, well, you take the amount of people who are eligible for food stamps, and then you'd take away the people who are actually claiming it. Problem with that is, just because a person is eligible for food stamps doesn't mean they're really in dire need of it. So, like, I don't know. So no matter how much I think about it, I can't figure out where governments would get these statistics from and how they would really hold up. I don't get it at all. There's way too many extremes and factors that I would have thought would completely screw with the numbers, particularly when obesity is such a problem today. I want to be clear, I'm not taking issue with the idea that there are people who are going hungry, or who, can't afford food or can't make ends meet. Obviously that's the case. There are people like that. I am just taking more of an issue with where governments or statistics offices would get these numbers. I don't know where they would get them from. If anybody knows, feel free to get in touch with me, because I'd love to know, because it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. It just seems like there'd be way too many things to measure that. There'd be way too many things you would need to measure, and you couldn't do it either by say a dietary analysis of people, because again, there's people who are overweight who eat more than they should, and there's people who eat less than they should, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the means to eat. And by the time you gathered all of those dietary accounts of people, first of all, it would take forever. And second of all, by the time you've done it, a number of people will probably have changed their diet, because, slowly but surely, I think people are starting to become a little bit more health conscious, and people do generally get more health conscious as they get older, and will be more likely to change their diet. And so the whole idea of hunger statistics is just very, very deeply confusing to me, and I was so caught up with it. I just felt the need to get it down somewhere. I thought first about writing it, but I thought it might be better in some ways to get it down on video rather than writing it. It took a lot less time than I thought it might, but hopefully you can kind of see where I'm coming from and why it seems so confusing to me. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it right now. If you have any thoughts, be sure to leave a comment. And if you actually know how these statistics are gotten, then by all means let me know. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about it now. So, see ya.